Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'da, Habibti fillah, a question was asked about the issue of takfir. Where's the evidence that only ulama can make takfir on major shirk? One must make takfir over the mushrikeen for their shahada to even be valid. This is because the first pillar of La ilaha illallah necessitates takfir and bara'ah from major shirk in all its people. La ilaha, regardless of whether or not they claim Islam. So this question, I'm not sure if the person wishes to share in making the judgment of takfir with the scholars or not. I'm not really sure why, what the intent of the questioner is, but we'll try to give it its right and do the best we can to offer that which is beneficial, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. First and foremost, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Kitab al-Kareem, فَاسْأَلْ أَهْلِ ذِكْرٍ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you don't know. So meaning if you don't have knowledge of something, that you should ask those who have more knowledge than you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifies أهل ذِكْر. أهل ذِكْر, they are the people of knowledge. أهل العلم والعلماء. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that the people who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala most are the ulama. Takfir is one of the major masail in the religion of Islam. It's one of the major issues in the religion of Islam. So it means it's something not light. And I just came across a statement I was going to share with you, what Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah said with regards to the issue of making tabdi', of declaring someone to be an innovator. And it was a very beautiful speech, and maybe one day we'll go over that, and showing how cautious and how serious, and he was showing the prerequisite ilm that it requires before taking someone off the sunnah, meaning declaring that they're from Ahl Bid'ah and not from Ahl Sunnah. If that's the case with that mas'ala of tabdi', how much more so is it when declaring a person who adheres to the religion of Islam and you are making a judgment with regards to them being outside the fold of Islam? And let's just put it in the perspective that I believe that the questioner is, that this questioner has, because they're talking about people who they are convinced that they are disbelievers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and or that the evidence is very clear. And I don't think that is necessarily the issue at hand that we're referring to. For example, you don't have to be a scholar or a person of knowledge to declare whether a Jew or a Christian is not a Muslim, that they're a disbeliever in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They disbelieve in the religion of Islam. Okay? That's not, and I think that's outside of the mas'ala. But I think the questioner is talking about the major shirk. So what we need to establish, and I think we can agree with the questioner, that it requires knowledge of what shirk is. Okay, before you enter into this bab, you have to have knowledge of what minor and major shirk is. You have to be able to, when you're going to make a hukm on someone, you should be able to articulate what major shirk is and what minor shirk is, what major disbelief is and what minor disbelief is. So you need to have knowledge of those, of the dawabit, of the criterion for that. You also need to know what tawheed is. You need to be an understanding tawheed. So let's assume that the questioner, that what they're referring to is the one who knows tawheed, and they know shirk, they know what's sufficient, and they see things that are clearly outside of the fold of Islam, and declaring a hukum on the people who are doing that. What's problematic is because as I mentioned, this issue is a more advanced issue. We're not saying that, you see someone, they're doing the major shirk, so you're aware that they're committing the major shirk. But we're talking about the difference between takfir al-ma'ayyan with takfir al-mutlaq. We're talking about the difference between the general takfir, meaning that someone has done such and such, whoever does such and such sin, they're a disbeliever. And this is also the scholars, some of them, they mention that this is a wasf. This is a descriptive it's takfir based on a description, meaning it is a description of a particular sin. Whoever steps on the Quran is a disbeliever, without looking at who the individual is. Takfir al-ma'ayin is, as in we've said this many times, but takfir al-ma'ayin is the specific takfir when you are declaring takfir on a specific individual. For example, brother X has worships the grave and supplicates to the dead. Okay, this is clearly kufr that takes you out of the fold of Islam. What Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah is saying, because this is what you find in the books about that detail, the issue of takfir. And I'm not talking about just our scholars in Saudi and so forth, but I'm talking about ulama, Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, Imam Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. Taib, forget that. Let's go back. Let's go back to the Salaf. And if we go to the aqwal of the Salaf and we look at how the early scholars, and I mean early scholars, some scholars that maybe even were outside of the fold of Ahl Sunnah at one point, but then they came back. You'll find that they detail Imam Ghazali, who a lot of the Sufis love. He details some of the issues of takfir in his books. And so you'll find many of the ulama of Islam, they dealt with these things. And what you will find consistent as one of the criterion for takfir is iqamatul hujjah. Iqamatul hujjah. That before you make takfir on someone, you should establish the proof on them. Okay? That means that they should have the opportunity to know that this issue they have fallen into is the major disbelief. Because this has to do with declaring the person a disbeliever, that they're outside of the fold of Islam. So we're talking about people that say La ilaha illallah, as you mentioned in the question. So they, believe in the kalimat tawheed from what they understand, but perhaps, and this is what also the ulama have detailed, perhaps this individual may have one of the things that prevent making takfir. They may have ta'wil, they may have misinterpretation of the verses or what have you. They may have some sort of doubtfulness. So it's iqamatul hujjah wa izalatul shubha. It is establishing the proof and removing the doubt from the individual. This is why Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, rahimahullah ta'ala, has his book Kashf al-Shubahat and these kind of things, because he is establishing the proof. For those people he was writing to and bringing his risa'il to, that he was establishing the hujjah. He was presenting the proof so that they no longer had the excuse of ignorance or ta'wil. Ignorance is one excuse, meaning that the person is totally jahil. The person could be, the scholars mention, Imam Nawawi details this as well, about the one who is new to Islam. Okay, so the scholars, you'll find in a lot of texts that talk about the issue of takfir, that they mention some of these criterion and these mu'ana, these things that prohibit making takfir on an individual. Either that they could be ignorant, they could have ta'wil, they could have karaha, meaning that they could be forced, okay, to say a statement of kufr or do a statement of kufr, but in their hearts they had iman, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions. So this could be their case. The point is, Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, they are in agreement of this concept, this principle of establishing the proof, wa azalat shubha, and removing the doubt. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah spoke about this extensively because he helped to codify the minhaj of the Salaf. For example, in some of the classical texts, you'll find scholars, these concepts were mentioned, but it wasn't the way it was articulated, might not be as neat and tidy and researched, if you will, as Shaykh al-Islam. Shaykh al-Islam, was Shaykh al-Islam, and he detailed what they said. He took their statements, he understood their statements, and help to compile and propagate the madhab of the Salaf. So you'll find a different sloob in some issues, and you'll see the way that he detailed and helped to codify or help to preserve the madhab of the Salaf, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So my point being of why we say this, why we hold to this, that a scholar, because we see we see one of the things when it comes to even talking about someone as a fasik, they're a wicked sinner, or they're a tabdi', declaring them an innovator, it takes some taqwa. It takes taqwa. And this is why the Sahaba to Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, when asked to give a fatwa, not even make a hukum on a specific individual or anything, but just making a fatwa of some knowledge that I'm sure that they knew. And we all know the narration, I think it was 70 sahabi that it went around until it went back to the first one, because they had taqwa, they feared Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whereas we have people who are new to Islam, people who have never studied, some people who may have a little bit, they've listened to a lot of nice lectures in their language. They can't even go to the sources of the Arabic language. They can't even go to the sources of the scholars, but they're ready to make a hukum on someone. This is the danger. So this is why we say, and why our scholars say, that this is a majal for the scholars, because there's a lot of mufasid, a lot of wickedness that spreads when the lay persons get involved in these issues. Even if they know that this is an issue of kufr, but we're talking about making that ruling on that individual to where you're now saying that they no longer have the sanctity of Islam. And you tend to operate based on that. Meaning a lot of the takfiris, I'm not saying the questioner at hand, but I'm saying a lot of the takfiris, that they begin to operate by that. Then they begin to say, hey, we made takfir of him. We can do something to him. We can harm him. His blood is lawful. His family should be divorced. He should be this. He should be that. And we see the mufasid of this. This happens. This really happens because ahl ghulu, the people who are extreme, this is their manhaj and their methodology. So really, most people can't even handle that authority. That authority is for the scholars. And there's ample adillah. And as I said, we just mentioned the ayah of Allah, whether you want to take it or not, that these are intricate details. If we said this about tabdi' or tafsiq, what about takfir? You're talking about someone who's not a Muslim, that he should not get salams, he should not be buried with the Muslims, he should not, all those ahkam and ruling pertinent to a Muslim no longer apply to them. So it's a very serious thing. This is why also in Muslim countries, these authorities are not for, even the scholars are not the ones who make these judgments. If there was a real legitimate situation, it would be brought to the hakam. It's brought to the judge, because if everyone were to share in the hukum of takfir and implementing the hudud, this is another mas'ala, but they tend to sometimes go hand in hand with some of these extreme groups and some of the people who have a lot of zeal to practice Islam, that you see that what happens is they begin to do the most evilest of things, thinking that they're coming closer to Allah, but instead they're far from Allah and His religion, distorting the religion of Islam, making takfir, declaring people's blood to be halal, and harming people physically. This was the original Khawarij were exactly that. Wasn't it that they declared Sahabi, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, to be disbelievers and make their blood lawful and fight against them? Isn't this the case? This is the original Khawarij. Likewise, and you can see why it's not something everyone should get in, and they believe in commanding the good and the forbidden the evil, because they were implementing according to their ra'i, according to their knowledge and their opinion of how this should be applied. So they are actually thinking they were establishing the proof against Sahabat al-Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, radiyallahu ta'ala, which means fighting, making takfir and fighting them. Look at how Ahl al-Dalal goes from Dalal to Adal. They go from misguidance to even more misguidance. So it's a very dangerous thing. Likewise, we can look at many of the most famous takfiri movements, especially those who acted. Look at Faraj. He was the I think he was what would maybe consider the leader of Jamaat Takfir or Hijra, or he was actually prior to that, if I recall. He was responsible for killing Sadat. You see that these people, that they made Hijra in Egypt, meaning they declared the whole state disbeliever. The only way you could authenticate your Islam is if you made Hijra in the mountains in Egypt with them. Doesn't that reek of misguidance? And we could detail these things, and it's unbelievable. And I'll tell you a last story that happened to me when I first left Yemen. I met this guy. He was an Arab. I don't remember. He was Jordanian, and we were walking, and I was with a friend of mine who was from Uzbekistan. Okay, and so we were, me and this guy. He didn't speak English, so we're going at it in Arabic. And he was a Takfir. He was praising Sayyid Qutb and all this other stuff, and I'm not just saying that that's his evidence of Takfir, but all of what he was making Takfir of everyone. Let me show you how a Dal Mudil operates. So we're having this discussion, and I said, listen. Then all of a sudden the adhan went off. I said, let's go to the masjid, and then we'll continue the discussion. He said, I'm not going to the masjid. He said, all the masajid here, they're masjid Darar, which is the masjid of the hypocrites. He said the imam is a disbeliever. The people praying in the masjid are hypocrites following this disbeliever. And, the government and their troops and all this other stuff, they're all disbelievers. And, the imam is on their payroll. So he just made, so much so he wouldn't pray in the masajid. He prayed out in the thing. This is not a revert that was new and ignorant. This was a man who was born in Islam, was born in Jahil, and we don't know if Allah guided him after that, but from Jahil to Jahil, from misguidance, or from Jahil to just pure misguidance and sickness of the heart, to where he just declared all the Muslims, he wouldn't even pray with the Muslims. Because to him, they were all misguided. Only only him and the other people of falsehood were in the truth. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi subhanallah azim. So habiti fillah is very important, that to not delve into these affairs. Yes, if you see, you're not going to pray behind someone you see doing the major shirk. But for you to rush, especially if you don't have knowledge. I'm saying maybe you're a student of knowledge. So if you're a student of knowledge, meaning that you've studied these masail of takfir, then you're in a better position to be able to make a ruling and operate by that. But it's a very serious ruling that you'll be before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with. We ask Allah the Almighty to accept our good and forgive our evil. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.